Today, we're going to be sharing some tips from a very experienced transformation expert. In fact, Zah has worked in so many finance transformations. What we agreed on this chat was that we would pick up some of the things that she routinely does, and she does them routinely because she knows how effective they can be. So I'm going to hand over to Zah first of all, because I think one of the things she wants to talk about is the start of an initiative, how she creates a feeling of safety, psychological safety.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. Just a little bit before I start on that is that I normally get called in because there is no traction to change or there's confusion around the change. People aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So just to put it into context, when I get called in, it's normally a rescue situation or people are just not doing what they're asked to do. Okay,
Well, I think our audience can appreciate a lack of traction. They're probably experiencing that quite a lot on their initiatives too.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is, of all the organizations I've been into, there's a common theme, okay? There's always a common theme, and that is we don't really know where we're going. No one's listening. We're not clear on the vision. We don't know the journey. All the basics, they really are the absolute basics. So for me, when I go in, the first thing I would ever do is to spend 2 days with various people. I'm not going to refer to them as stakeholders yet. They're just business people. And from that, I will learn what the mood of the organization is, and I will give them free rein. Actually, safe space starts here. I'll give them free rein to say whatever they want. I don't mind, because it's just giving me that information, psychological information about what's going on in people's heads, how they're feeling. I need all of that environmental information before I can design anything. Okay.
Do you go and sit with them one to one? Do you have meetings? How do you do it?
There's a number of different ways. I think with the senior people, I will normally have one-to-ones. Okay. And I ask them to be candid, be open. I have no problems with whatever they say. Even if they attack me, which has happened, by the way, it doesn't matter, because sometimes they feel defensive because they've started this and they're thinking, well, who are you, type thing, which is fair enough. I get it. I take nothing personally from what's going on. It's just their experience. They're just pushing out there, and I get it. They're frustrated.
That's an interesting point you raise about people, when threatened, can feel very defensive. But the fact that you specifically say you don't take anything personally because you recognize it's the normal part of the change initiative.
I'm very fortunate to know that is what's going on. And I think being experienced, I mean, it hasn't just come to me overnight. It's years of being in these situations, and you think, okay, there's something fundamentally going on with that person, okay? Because they don't really know me. There's something going on with them, and you think, okay, longer term, I'm going to have to support that person. Where are the needs? So I'm just listening. I'm absolutely listening, making notes, making no judgments, because I haven't lived their life in terms of where they've got to and why they're feeling the way they're feeling. So for senior managers, definitely one-to-ones. For the more junior staff, I might run a workshop because they're not normally open. They haven't got there yet. So I might do, 3 or 4 people together, and I just let them chat and tell me how they're feeling, what they think of the change. Normally, well, we don't know anything about it, but it really is a common thing. And what you find right early on, and this is really important, is there's such a disconnect from the top to the bottom. Okay, the language they use, etc. So I'm picking this information up so that when I actually start the work, I know what I'm dealing with. And for me, I have to fix all of those communication problems, not just one, all of them, for it to work.
It's
So
really interesting that you pick up on there's a disconnect from top to bottom, because at the change capability community a few months ago we had that conversation, and it was that huge awareness that senior managers are making certain assumptions about, they've said it, they think they've given the vision of the change, they think that because they've said it once that everybody gets it, but also perhaps a failure to recognize that they have described a change that's quite strategic, and that it doesn't connect with people's day job, exactly what will change for them. And that connection hasn't been made at all.
yeah, and that, and to be honest with you, I'll come to that a bit later on. But so there's the senior managers, the exec talking about the change in business terms. And the people at the bottom are not really understanding because they are not that experienced, they're not that advanced, they don't use the same language, the terminologies are all over the place. And what happens is you've got two types of people who are, what shall I say, people who look at losses and people who look at gains. So I'm putting it simply, and if your tendency is to be pessimistic, you'll take all the bad things out of that message, and then you get this ripple of noise going on. And what you want to do is you want to smooth those ripples out. And how do you do that? So that's part of the approach. So I've listened to everything now. I understand the environment. I probably also know I don't like to call people troublemakers. I call them insecure. They're insecure people, and they don't mean any ill, but they just don't know how to channel what they want to say in the appropriate way.
Right. They don't get up in the morning thinking I'm going to make everybody's lives a misery,
That's right.
but they can have that effect.
That's right. So that's the impact when that happens. So having gathered all the information, I will then design an approach. And the approach, that it's really important. You can call it strategy, you can call it approach. I prefer the word approach because people understand that. Okay. And I will put down steps to, first of all, so the approach is to get to the goal that I've been asked to do. Okay. Whatever that goal might be is, steps of in the approach. And that is then shared with the senior managers, make sure they understand what I am going to do and how I'm going to do it and who's going to be involved. And because you put it so simply, because they don't understand the work behind the scenes, because that's not their day job, they're not experts in that. But they know they're going to get their goal. That's what they're interested in.
Do you at this point also make it clear, therefore, to get to that goal, although they don't understand all the transformation activities that you have to go through, that you set out for them what you will want from them? So is
Oh,
it a
absolutely.
two-way, basically?
Absolutely, because I can't do it without them. That's a real message that goes out, not just to the senior people, but also to the people who are going to come into the team to work with me. I can't do this without them. I explain to them what I do, which is I'm really a hardcore facilitator. Okay. I will give them tools, I will give them techniques for conflict resolution, and there'll be workshops, and I'll take them through various things until they naturally come to the point where it makes sense to everybody in the room. So there's no way, I'm not an expert in their business, they are. That's really important to recognize up front. And I don't, yes, I've done finance transformation. That's my background is finance, but my background is also engineering, which is solutionizing. Solutionizing doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do a technical solution. It means I'm going to find a solution to the problem, whatever that problem might be. It doesn't
I
matter.
really love that description of hardcore facilitator, because I think our audience will recognize in themselves that they do have those facilitation skills, but you are bringing to the fore just how important that is. So you set out your approach with the senior leaders. Do you also share that approach with more junior staff?
Everyone, once that's there, that is the first page I present at any meeting, and I'll tell them where we are on the approach. So it's not that the senior managers are getting a different message. to what everyone else is getting. It's exactly the same message. And
You're
also,
fixing the problem that they don't know the journey. You're
that's
giving
it.
them a journey.
Yep, I'm giving them clarity. I am saying what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. So, having set that scene, that sort of starts to build a bit of momentum, but it's not there yet because you've got to demonstrate now what you said you'll do. I always do what I say I'm going to do. And if I can't, I will say I can't. And it doesn't matter as long as you're really clear with people. So,
That's managing their expectations on a
absolutely.
very clear.
And the other thing is about the approach is that's the point when you clear up all the terminology. So that if I use a word they don't understand, I will explain. And actually, one of the other things is just because I've done the approach, it doesn't mean it's perfect. So I'm very confident that I can give it to someone else and I'll say, tell me why it won't work. And they might come up with a brilliant idea. So we would dialogue around the approach. And if they say, well, we don't think that particular item will work in this organization because of, we can either change it or we can put a solution in place, whatever's best.
So you're creating a little bit of ownership
That's
in
right.
terms of it's a two-way engagement.
So
So
such a very
so
early.
you've done your listening, you've done your approach.
Yeah. The next bit is getting the people in the right space where they can trust you, really trust you and be honest. So one of the things I agree with managers, line managers, and the exec is that I need the freedom to take people that I think will actually add value in some of the workshops that I'm going to do. So I don't want constraints around, oh, just take so and so because they're going to give you the perfect answers, because they wouldn't be in this situation if there were perfect answers. I know that for a fact. So I will take people into a workshop. It depends. It could be 2 people or it could be 10 people. It doesn't matter. But I am very clear about the rules of the workshop. Okay, about creating the safe space, about whatever we discuss here, however it's said, because not everybody can articulate a frustration in an eloquent way or politically correct way. We have to, stays in this workshop. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't go
So you're
in.
giving them a confidence that they can speak out. But I just want to come back to that point. You are asking senior managers to release those people that you think will actually have the answers rather than the, as you say, the politically correct statements.
Yes.
So that brings me to a question that comes up all the time. How do you persuade people that are already too busy to be able to free up a bit more time?
Okay. This is really an interesting one because I get asked all the time. So when let's assume for a minute, I'm trying to understand the as is position of a particular process or something that's gone really wrong in the organization, creates lots of issues downstream, upstream, all sorts of things. I will have identified them because of my knowledge in finance. Okay, that's the first thing. Then I don't ask them to do any prep. All I ever ask them to do is attend a 2-hour slot with me. Okay, all the work is done there. They don't need to prep anything. They don't need to look anything up, because if they don't know something, they don't know something. Okay, so the only time they will spend with me is that 2 hours. And if they can't release 2 hours, it means that nobody can have a sick day, nobody can have a holiday, nobody can have anything. There's another fundamental problem that will actually take the department down onto its knees. If you're that reliant on one person, they can't give me 2 hours, there's an issue already.
Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it.
So,
Okay, so
I mean,
you're in their workshop, you've done a couple of hours with them. What do you do next?
Well, so at the start of the workshop, I normally have a very simple chart to say, when you come in, I'm not in the room, I just explain to them they need to tick a box. It might be how much clarity do they have? They just need to tick 1 to 5. 5 being the highest clarity, 1 being the lowest. There'll be 3 or 4 questions like that. Okay,
You do a sentiment assessment as they come in.
that's
Do
right.
you repeat it when they leave?
Absolutely.
Ah, okay. So that in the moment measure of how things are
And
going.
yeah, and I say to them, look, anybody who is still at 1 after the workshop or 2, if you would like to talk to me on a 1-to-1, I'm very happy to talk to you and clear up anything that you're not getting. I leave that bit up to them because I don't want to pressurize them. Okay. And what happens is, after a couple of these workshops, the word starts to filter, right? And the only output they ever see is fact, never any emotion. Okay. A process is not emotional. It's only fact-based. And I also say to them, look, if you get something wrong in this process, it is not the end of the world. All right. So if you think you can't say something because you are not 100% sure whether it's just say it. We will then validate it later. So they feel quite comfortable, and slowly, they're taking over. And it's brilliant. I love it. They're so engaged. So what happens is, after 2 or 3 workshops of this nature, the word gets out and they're actually coming to me.
I
And
think that's something we would just want to, we've obviously been going for quite a while, so we'll have to
yes,
wrap it up soon. So I think that's something we probably ought to sort of think about is what you're describing there is that transfer of ownership through trust, through honesty,
yes,
through the fact that people do have that psychological safety because they know they can express themselves, say anything they want to say. And you are, I think I'll come back to that hardcore facilitation, which is that you are carefully teasing out the things that they need to say. And as you do that, you are enabling them to create their new ways of working. And
absolutely.
that's why you get that ownership transfer.
Just one last thing on that. When we go through a workshop like that and they've got the process drawn up, things start to click in their head saying, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? I
Yeah.
don't understand. And the change has already started at this point. So that's one of the reasons why I do it. They start to take ownership, they start solutionizing themselves. There's a level of freedom kicking off.
I think that just is a fantastic way to have described that magic that happens when people do pick up and run with the change for themselves and they do have that ownership. Because as you said, an indicator, perhaps you've transferred the ownership,
Yeah,
is that they start to question for themselves and I'm sure share potential ideas, which again,
they
back
do.
circling back to your hardcore facilitation,
Yeah.
you will tease out of them.
Yeah. So as a facilitator, don't be afraid to be challenged, because you should be challenged. And if you don't know the answer, you say, actually, I don't know, but I'll find out. That's
So
simple,
you're bringing something to the table then.
right? So, that happens, and it's really good. So you can imagine the output from that, because I would have put right in the approach process, I would have asked that, well, basically said to the managers, look, you don't have much time for me, and I totally get it. I don't want your time to be taken up with being in any of these workshops. Where I really need you, where I think you think you'll be needed, is for you to do the reviews of what's happening. So when they get the reviews, they get facts. They don't get emotion, so it makes it so much nicer and easier and simpler. Okay. And they can challenge some of the stuff that we do, which is fine, no problem. And they know their place now in the process. They're reviewers and they will make the early decisions. So they take that and they go through it. I can either do it with one manager or 2 or 3, depending on the process, how many people are involved. They have a little debate amongst themselves saying, oh, well, I didn't know you needed that. Or upstream, they'll say, we didn't know we were sending you that. I thought it was just going into this database. That was it. So there's, but now we are joining up, call it an end-to-end process.
You're spreading the involvement and the ownership, aren't you?
Right.
And it's really interesting for me. I suppose we'll make this our final comment, but the observation I see is that you are emphasizing how, particularly with the process transformation, you're talking about the facts and that the process doesn't have emotions. That actually changes all about emotions. And in keeping the process factual, you're enabling people to safely express their emotions about changing the process.
And they create the quick wins. And which is fantastic. They start, and really it's about bringing a team together to perform together.
Yes, there is an element I can absolutely see. What you're describing here is an element of building a high performing, almost transformation team, because they are, as they take that ownership and as they find those quick wins, they find their own motivation. And certainly that it builds up. It's a virtuous circle, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's all about transparency. With all of this stuff, it's all about transparency. There's never a reason to hide anything.
And I think, as you described at the beginning of this call, it is your willingness to be transparent about how you will approach things. And that approach document that you take everybody through, I think probably is the bedrock of your success. And I
I
know you're an incredibly successful transformation expert. So we're very grateful for your time today. That's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Zah.
Thanks. Okay.